Well, we finally have some good news out there that we got to talk about in regards to this Russia situation. Now, in regards to this Russia situation, I want to talk for a moment, not just about this good news that has come out here recently, but I also want to talk about what that means. I want to talk about the possibility that this could also get ugly, because remember, it was just a week and a half ago. We got some good news regarding this Russia situation, right? It was like, oh, they're taking back troops. And all of a sudden it was like, oh no, they're actually adding a bunch more troops closer to the border. And so I want to talk about, like, what are the chances something like that happens again in this situation where all of a sudden it's like, oh, I thought it was getting better. Oh no, it's actually getting a lot worse. We're going to talk about what this means for the market, right? I've had a lot of people say, oh man, if Russia goes into Ukraine, get ready for another 10% drop in the S&P 500, which would be a massive drop, right? We're going to talk about what all this means for the stock market as well. And I want to talk about it on kind of a military front, on why this wouldn't really make sense for Russia and what I think they're actually planning on in this situation. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this as always. And so in regards to this, good news, futures are obviously have went up, and switched directions in a massive way. Market's still not open for another 24 hours or so. Keep that in mind. Market doesn't open until Tuesday. But Biden agrees to meet with Putin in principle if Russia has not invaded Ukraine. So what this sounds like is, it sounds like there's a real chance of diplomacy in this situation. There's a real chance of talks and getting this kind of solved out. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't think Russia really wants to go into Ukraine. I really, truly don't. And you got to understand, Putin has said they are not interested to go to Ukraine. Now, some people say, oh, maybe he's lying in that situation. I don't think he is lying in this situation. I really don't think they want to go into Ukraine. I think, are they loving this moment? Yes, I think they are. I think they're loving being the center of attention right now and kind of pushing around. And hey, everybody's looking at Russia right now. They're the center of the world. I think they're liking this. I think they're loving energy prices going crazy. I don't know if you've been tracking oil and gas. Oh my gosh, okay? And for February, some of those numbers are getting pushed up there pretty darn high. And so I think Russia's loving the situation, but I also don't think they actually want to make a move and actually go into Ukraine. You got to understand some things very specifically about this. A lot of people think, oh, Russia could just go into Ukraine and take them out. It ain't simple like that, baby. Okay? So here's the situation for Ukraine. Are they outnumbered and outgunned? Absolutely. Absolutely, they're outnumbered and outgunned, right? Ukraine has 200,000 active troops. Russia has 900,000. That's like, 450% more? Attack aircrafts 98 versus 1,500. Attack helicopters 34 versus 544. Tanks 2,500 versus 12,000. Armored vehicles 12,000 versus 30,000. Total artillery 2,000 versus 7,500. Okay, I think when you look at the numbers, it's very clear that if Russia really wanted to go to war with Ukraine, I think Russia has slightly, advantage there. But keep in mind, Ukraine would be likely helped, maybe not by direct troop support, but they would likely just keep getting more and more equipment from their European friends and from the U.S. as well. U.S. has already helped Ukraine out quite a bit when it comes to equipment. Okay, so now Russia, if they were to actually go into Ukraine, keep this in mind. They're going to lose a lot of lives, and they're going to lose a lot of equipment, okay? And they're going to lose a lot of respect around the world, and they're going to likely lose a lot of respect inside their own country, essentially, right? And we'll get to that in just a moment. I think that's the biggest part. And so I don't really think Russia, I think if Ukraine was just a little easy pushover, I think they might. But in this situation, it's not going to be a pushover. If they really try to go in Ukraine, I'm telling you, it is going to be a mess. It will be long and drawn out. Now, in regards to Russia, I think it's important, and I understand, I live in the United States of America, and, sometimes you almost are thought to never put your feet in the other person's shoes, right? And at the end of the day, when I think about Russia, right, I think about a country that, was told at one time that, essentially NATO wasn't going to move in close to them. And what do we look at? Look at NATO expansion since 1997. Look at this, okay? And so now we're right on Russia's foot, right at their doorstep, essentially. Well, if all of a sudden these guys are taken, next thing you know, boom, 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 you're right there. You're right at Russia's doorstep. And I know now, Russia doesn't want that. And if you're the president of Russia, you've got to push back against this. You have no choice, because you do not want I don't want to call it your enemies, but they're certainly not your friends. It's not like NATO and Russia are friends. You don't want them right at your doorstep like that, right? There's no way you want that. And so this is a situation where Russia is trying to, in my opinion, to scare everybody to make sure, Ukraine never joins NATO, essentially, right? And I can understand it from their context, but if Russia was to make a move in Ukraine, man, I'm telling you, then Ukraine's for sure joining NATO after that, essentially, and especially if it was a failed conflict, then we're in a situation where Ukraine is no doubt joining Russia. So Russia, I feel like, trying to do a lot of kind of scare tactics right now. Look at this: NATO and extra U.S. troops in Eastern Europe. NATO troops, U.S. troops, So imagine, boom, you're right here as well. Imagine this is all NATO. Well, next thing you know, guess what you're going to have at your doorstep? U.S. troops, NATO troops, and then every little time anything happens, all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch more NATO troops, a bunch more U.S. troops, okay? And so if you're the president of Russia, you don't want that. You don't want that at all, right? Not at your doorstep like that. That's an ugly situation. Obviously in the United States, we got it really dang good because we got just oceans on the side of us, and at the top we got Canada, and at the bottom we got Mexico. We got it really dang good. If you're Russia, that's a little scary in that situation. You got, all these people right here, It's a little scary. Now, you can say with nuclear weapons and those sorts of things, it shouldn't be that thing scary because, if you didn't know, Russia has a crazy amount of stuff. Let's just put it that way, that if, anybody ever tried something, it can get ugly really, really fast. Now, just for some context, this is from 2017. What does the U.S. Army have? We have, it's a big flex, okay? 3,400 tactical aircrafts, 637 unmanned aerial vehicles. I wouldn't be surprised if that number is actually much more substantial now. 157 bombers, 450 intercontinental ballistic missile launchers, 2,800 tanks. But why do we not have as many tanks as, let's say, Russia? Who's going to invade? Like, you can't invade the states like that. So, it's not as important to have all those tanks versus, Ukraine and Russia, for instance. They like to have a lot of tanks because you never know if somebody's going to try to actually come into your land, right? We have 10 aircraft carriers, 68 submarines, 760 attack helicopters. Yeah, it's crazy, okay? Russia's numbers are crazy too. U.S. and Russia, we're just paranoid. That's all I would say. We're paranoid about everything all the time, man. It's like, you ever had one of those friends that, like, they keep, like, a gun, like, in all these different, like, safety compartments in their house, and it's like, oh, yeah, you hit this button, and then a shotgun comes down, baby. And it's like, holy smokes, man, you're ready for a war. That's the way, the United States and Russia thinks, essentially, right? So it's a good take here I like. Could Russia stage a full-scale invasion? Most military analysts say this would be unlikely because it would involve a long and messy war with unavoidably heavy casualties. Exactly. It would be heavy casualties. They expect Russia to opt for basically crushing airstrikes and or limited land grabs rather than an all-out war, including battles for major cities. One option would be for Russia to push south and west into the region of East Ukraine, already controlled by pro-Russian forces, to link up with annexed Crimea, I can never pronounce the word right, Crimea, and help me out in the comment section, okay, and the Black Sea. There's also a possibility that troops taking part in military drills in Belarus could cross Ukraine's northern border as part of any attack. Putin would likely face qualms from his own public about waging a war on a fellow Slav nation, as well as intense anti-Russian sentiment within Ukraine. He's also been warned by the West that Russia would be hit with unprecedented sanctions if it attacks Ukraine. And so when you think about it from all this context, it makes no sense for Russia to actually make a move in this situation, right? And we're going to talk about, if they did make a move, what that would mean for the stock market and those sorts of things. But it makes no sense for Russia to actually make a move and go in there. It makes sense that they want to try to scare everybody in the short term, right? And cause drama and be the center of attention right now. It makes a lot of sense. And they can, negotiate based upon that, right? Kind of be a little bit of a bully right now and kind of negotiate. And you got some wiggle room. And then it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go in there. If you don't give us what we want, we're going to potentially go in there. And so you kind of have the United States playing this part, right? And it's not just the United States, Europe's playing this part as well. of trying to be the good guys and helping out in this situation. But you got Russia kind of being like, hey, we could go in there. You don't give us what we want. We could go in there, right? Now, in terms of, the stock market, right? In terms of what does this mean for the stock market? Well, first off, like I said, it's very unlikely that Russia would go in there and do any sort of like full-scale attack. So keep that in mind. But if they did do that, in my opinion, it would be a negative short-term thing for the stock market, but I don't see it being a long-term negative thing. It would be a shakeup of the market. I could see like a 5, 10, maybe 15% move down if that actually happened, because everybody would be like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And U.S. said they're not going to put in any troops, but are they going to put in troops? And then is all of a sudden going to become a U.S. versus, because in the United States, we can't, keep our hands out of everything. We got to get involved with everything, right? That's just, I don't know, you can say it's right, you can say it's wrong, but we seem to get our hands involved in everything. We got an itchy trigger finger, it always seems like, right? We're like just waiting for somebody to do something. You just see what happens, okay? And that kind of seems like the stance we like to take sometimes. And if we're right, if we're wrong, it is what it is, right? But in my opinion, if Russia did make a move, like a 5 to 15% move down, I could see for a very short amount of time. If something like that happened, it would be another dramatic thing in the market, right? But I would call, in terms of a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, I would call it less than a 10% probability, because it just, when you start looking at it, it just doesn't make any dang sense. It doesn't make any sense at all, to be quite honest. With the amount of casualties that would happen and the amount of sanctions that would be put on Russia in that situation, how they'd be cast off for decades. Yeah, a full-scale invasion doesn't make sense. It would also, there's a lot of people in Russia that really don't want that invasion, to be quite honest. And, so I just don't see it happening. But if it did, yeah, I think a 5 to 15% type move down. The good news is it's likely not going to happen. And so that gets the market some good news finally, which we have this wall of worry right now. It's like, what's Russia? It's a wall of worry, right? Inflation, Fed, Russia, it's like we have a big wall of worry, right? And I know, Kathy Wood's gotten a lot of hate recently, but Kathy Wood says, a lot of the best bull markets you'll ever find are built on walls of worry. That's exactly what I feel like we're in right now, a big wall of worry. And if Russia doesn't invade and things are solved here peacefully, I can tell you that's one brick down from the wall of worry. And then we just got to keep taking it brick by brick by brick by brick. The Fed, let's make sure the Fed doesn't do anything crazy come March, as long as they just raise by about 0.5%, which they should do. That's all good. Inflation will likely stop going up at the crazy clip it's going up right now, starting in probably 2 months from now, from what I believe is going to happen there, where inflation is going to keep going up, but it's not going to be at the crazy clip it's been going up, essentially. We have 2 more tough months to comp against. The February and March numbers are really tough comps. April, things start getting a lot easier, and especially as you get into May and then you get into the summer, essentially. So that's really good news when it comes to that. And so we're just going to destroy this wall of worry one step at a time, one brick at a time over the next several months, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, I obviously don't want to see war. That's never good. And like I said, it would get ugly. It would be messy. It would be long, and there would be a lot of lives lost. That's just factual. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this. As always, let me know what you think. I would love to hear your guys' opinion in the comment section. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're not already subscribed, it's free to do so. Hit that subscribe button. Much love, and have a great day.